Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Here's Why. I'm your host, Kevin Ortega-Rojas, and if you're watching this, congratulations. You survived yet another holiday with your drunken family. But Thanksgiving looked a little different for some Americans this year.
This morning, with Thanksgiving just days away, the new wave of prescription weight loss medications are altering how many will approach their holiday eating. With the average American consuming more than twice their recommended daily calories on a typical Thanksgiving day, drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro can be a game changer for those battling with obesity. Doctors suggest if you're taking these medications, be prepared to manage your feasting expectations.
That's right. There were concerns that the weight loss drug trend in America would prevent people from being able to feast on food. What a uniquely American problem to have. Maybe if we all stopped stuffing our faces long enough, we could focus on what this holiday is actually about. Family gossip. Yes, Tia Veronica, I know my mother owes you $20. Please, take that up with her. Speaking of being thankful, I am grateful to all of you for watching and supporting this new show. And I'm especially thankful to the more than 2,000 Trump supporters who hate watched last week's episode. Please, remember to leave a thumbs up with every death threat. It balances out your karma. Last week, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed to a 4-day pause in Gaza just in time for Black Friday. See, all Native Americans needed were some doorbuster deals to distract the pilgrims, and none of this would have happened. You know white people love discounts. Despite a major helium shortage, Macy's hosted their 97th annual Thanksgiving Day Parade. And can I just say that 97 years is a very long time to keep up this ridiculous tradition of staring at balloons. Macy's, I'm gonna let you get to 100, but after that, it's time to wrap this shit up. Anyway, the festivities were televised, but the revolution was not. 34 pro-Palestinian demonstrators were arrested for trying to stop the parade. Protesters pulled out flags, blocked floats, and glued themselves to the road. And good for them. Free Palestine. But I have to give it up to the film crew. They were as dedicated to hiding this shit away as a man cheating on his wife and kids. And speaking of women who are probably getting cheated on, conservative group 1 Million Moms protested the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade for their inclusion of 2 non-binary Broadway performers, Justin David Sullivan and Alex Newell. Of the 8,000 people who participated in this parade, they came to protest 2 people. Wow. Their impact. It's just like Lady Gaga said, there could be 100 people in a room, but you only need 1 trans person to piss off a soccer mom. Now that Thanksgiving is behind us, it's that time of year again. Lights are being strung all around the city, trees are being lit, tourists are filling the streets. It's time for our annual War on Christmas. But this year, Fox News host Jesse Waters added a little twist to his argument.
Gay nutcracker, complete with a rainbow hat, trans flag, full price, $12, but right now it's on sale for $8. Target also sells Santa ornaments, but Target's Santa is in a wheelchair and is black. And it's a good thing our chimney is wheelchair accessible, so Jesse Jr. is going to get all the gifts he wants.
This year, it's not that there's no Christmas, it's just that they don't want black, disabled, queer, trans, or non-binary people celebrating Christmas. I get it. But Jesse, where will Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott be celebrating the holidays? One is a self-hating, heel-wearing drag queen, and the other is a wheelchair-bound maniac. Oh well. Spyglass Productions is no longer invited to the Carniceria after firing our girl, Melissa Barrera, from the Scream franchise for calling out the State of Israel. Melissa was set to star in the upcoming slasher film alongside actress Jenna Ortega, who also stepped away from the project just hours after Barrera was fired. Not only did Melissa and Jenna star in the last 2 Scream films, Scream 6 had the biggest box office opening of any film in the series. And guess who watched? Latinos, that's right. The audience for Scream 6 was 38% Latino, and my online familia was very quick to let them know that we will not be watching the next Ghostface film. So Spyglass, vete pa'l carajo. Also, Oscar winner Susan Sarandon faced backlash for her support of Palestine. She was dropped by one of the biggest talent agencies in the world, UTA. Like she gives a shit? Influencers, take note. People like Susan Sarandon and Jane Fonda are out here getting arrested and losing jobs in order to stand up for what's right, and you are taking social media breaks just to avoid having to talk about a genocide. That is this week's monologue. When we come back, I'll be joined by my panel to discuss our headlines and trending topics. I'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to Here's Why. I am joined by this week's panel. Today, I am joined by activist and executive director of the New Pride Agenda, Elisa Crespo. I'm also joined by activist and journalist Afeef Nessouli and activist and cultural commentator Benjamin O'Keefe.
Lots of activists.
Lots of activists.
Yes.
Everyone's feeling very active. How
Very
are you
active.
guys? Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so let's start with this week's headlines. So, I really hate having to start this week's episode this way, but last night, 3 Palestinian and a Palestinian American college student were shot near the UVM campus in Burlington, Vermont. The students thankfully survived and are expected to recover. And this is suspected to have been an anti-Arab hate crime, though officials have not ruled it as such. But we've seen a rise in anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian rhetoric in America. So is this surprising? And what are your thoughts?
I actually know a family member of one of the kids shot, and it's just that Islamophobia is so entrenched. It's so insidious and entrenched in our culture that, I mean, Arabs are literally like occupied, they're demonized, they're violated, they're shot at for speaking Arabic, wearing kufiyas, and basically demanding universal basic rights, right? Like that's sick. Like these kids are just regular people. Like the thing is what really makes me so angry is like thousands of people in our communities have died, and we know those people. They are our family. Like they are people that we know, and I feel like Islamophobia is such a big problem. Racism is such a big problem that we know about. And I think Islamophobia is not any different. It's like that insidious. It's that entrenched.
But it's different in the sense where there's a double standard, where you coupled it with racism, but I would say that racism people will call out. Anti-Semitism
Exactly.
people will call out.
That's what I'm
Islamophobia is
totally.
one of the few isms that people actually just agree
Right.
with.
We have not really reckoned with the idea that Islamophobia is something that is so important to talk about that it should be in the same sentences that we do use for racism that we're very comfortable understanding now since 2020. And I think that we still have a lot of work to do, but in that way, you're right. I think Black men know very well how Arab men are feeling right now. And I think that has helped me a lot in terms of my conversations and my decolonizing and unpacking my own very internal like racism of Arabs, right?
Is that
As
an
an Arab
experience that
man.
you have?
Sorry?
Is that an experience that you have? I feel like we're all very aware of feelings of misogyny or like self-hatred or like our own internal homophobia. At least as a queer person, I've experienced that. But I never considered like your own
Oh, totally.
taking in of like anti-Arab ideology.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that has been such a deeper, darker experience because of 9/11 and post 9/11. Like I was called a terrorist so much. I was called a sand N-word regularly. Like it was by people that were just not even trying to be that mean. They were just being, most of the time it was jokingly, right? It was not even, it wasn't a joke. It was more like in jest. It was like as a normal ass conversation. So I think like over time, when that's one reality, and then the other reality, like going to Beirut when I was going there, and it being bombed by a U.S. funded country, it's like two realities, holding that together and then coming back and being kind of gaslit about what you've experienced in a context of being very like villainized after you're in real trauma or like you're grieving someone or you've experienced a bomb, which I've escaped war. Experiencing those things and coming back into like a racist culture that doesn't believe you, it's devastating because it really makes you second guess your own credibility, your own, and not consciously, right? Like very subconsciously. It makes you feel like you better just not even start.
Yeah.
Better
Elisa,
not.
have you noticed any change in like conversation around Palestinians or Muslims or Arabs on like your social media feed? Because I feel like our social media feeds are so curated to our ideology that like I don't see it, but I know that it exists, but like it just is not coming across.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, the algorithm, whatever you call it, it shows you things that are comparable to what else you're looking at. And so I don't think I have seen it, but I see it in real life. I mean, I'm married to an Arab man. I know what he's been through, and I know just from my own experience that when you talk about, the tragedy happening in Gaza, the genocide, you saying nothing at all about, you know, Israel or
Hmm.
Jewish people, it's automatically like you're against them. When in fact, no, it's like two things can be true, and so automatically when you're like speak up for the innocent civilians, tens of thousands, probably 20,000 now who have perished in Gaza, it's like you're supportive of Hamas and you're a terrorist. And like, no, for me, speaking for myself, that's absolutely not true. You can speak up for Palestinian people and be against Hamas. So in that regard, I absolutely see that,
And in
that
fact,
double standard.
it's not anti-Semitic; it is pro-Semitic because
Mm,
they're also Semitic,
That's right.
and
yeah.
it's such a hard balance when you feel stuck because you can't say anything. If you say one thing, it's not enough, or if you say the other, it's not enough. But at the end of the day, there are real people, and I think that we're losing the humanity here, and we see it in just the way it's reported.
Yeah.
In that, it's kids and Palestinians, not Palestinian kids,
Mhm.
and I've seen more videos of dead babies than I ever needed to see in my life. And when you hear people say that's not real, when you heard the president say, "I don't trust these numbers," well, we know the families, we see the names, and so you can't gaslight us into saying that this isn't real. And I think it actually does a disservice to the Israelis, to the Jewish community when they pit us against each other, and we can't say that both things are true.
What Ben was saying earlier about Biden actually is a great way to move on to the next topic, which is, Biden's poll numbers are struggling, and
Mhm.
his stance on Israel, his ever evolving position on a ceasefire versus a humanitarian pause, which at one point he called a tactical pause. It's a lot. And people are starting to be aware of it and call him out. But online this week, I have had so many debates and conversations with people who now suddenly are prepared to back a third party candidate, a fringe candidate. Everyone is just so ready to try on radicalism 15 weeks from the Iowa caucus. So, my question is, why does it feel like suddenly everyone was just unprepared for the election we knew was coming for 3 years? Why is everyone suddenly now ready to take on a third party candidate and take Marianne Williamson seriously?
I mean, look, my background's in politics. I was an advisor to Elizabeth Warren. I've worked for many of the biggest Democratic leaders in this country, and Democrats have a problem, and that is that Democrats do not look at the long game.
Mm-hmm.
They are incredibly short-sighted. We see this blow up in a huge way in the judicial system, and we've seen the Supreme Court. This has been a very intentional, many-year tactical strategy, but there were people who were screaming out. There were people who were saying this is going to happen. I mean, I've been talking about Biden's candidacy since he was elected and the fear that he would not be able to win again. And people called me crazy. People said I was terrible for even bringing it up. I think the radical piece is interesting because I don't even know if this is a matter of being radical or not. This is just a matter of actually looking forward, doing the math, trying to figure out, is he going to win against Trump or not? And the consequences of him not are too great. I think that Biden wasn't really the person people wanted the first time.
Totally.
And I saw firsthand, Barack Obama calling, drop out of the race, drop out of the race, drop out of the race. If you don't drop out of the race, X will happen, Z will happen. And it happened to him, or it happened to Warren, it happened to Pete, it happened to Bernie, it happened to all of them, because this is how these systems work. It's very top down, it's very much whipped. And so folks like now are seeing that there are options. There have always been options.
Right.
But ignorance by its very definition is a lack of knowledge. And there has not been enough education. There has not been enough of folks. And this starts in schools, right? Like, we don't get civic education. We were talking about this earlier, because if you understand how the system works, then you can make the system work for you. People are understanding that the system doesn't work. And now they're trying to figure out a way to make it work.
But am I insane for thinking that we learned this in 2016? Like, I really thought we learned our lesson in 2016, and I thought that we all had come to a
What lesson?
consensus
Like more
that the
radical.
system was broken, that everything was fucked, and that the system was stacked against us. So I thought because I'm stupid. I thought that as Americans, we had all decided in 2020, Biden is going to carry us past Trump, and then we will move on. I was ignorant and thought
I
that
don't
was the
think
plan.
that a third party candidate will ever win, not in the foreseeable future, just because of the way that the two-party system works and the way in which you have to get on a ballot in every state in this country. So, but I do think that, there was a poll that came out, lots of young people are not happy with the way Biden is handling the conflict in the Middle East. And, I would agree with that. But we were talking about this earlier as well. Despite young people making up the largest percentage of the electorate, that's not representative at the ballot box, at the polls. We're not actually getting up and going to vote on election day or during early voting, depending on where you live. So while that poll is promising, and I think it's great that young people are responding to it, I don't think it's going to translate at the ballot box on election day. You can call me pessimistic, but I think what we know is that generally older people who are smaller parts of the electorate show up in larger numbers.
But this is what I've been telling people, which is like, everyone's like, well, no one's going to support Biden. I'm like, you're not getting it. You are upset on TikTok, but people like Democrats exist in middle America. Democrats exist outside of these coastal cities, outside of college campuses. And my grandparents are not going to vote for Marianne Williamson, and they're not going to vote for Trump. People are going to continue supporting Biden.
Go ahead.
Sorry, the other thing is that our president is decided by like 4 states, swing states.
Yeah, right. It's very not.
These are all false choices.
These are false.
Yeah.
We shouldn't even be talking about third-party candidates. We should be talking about why didn't the Democrats allow other Democrats to challenge Biden? If Biden's the best candidate, then let him prove it. But instead, what marginalized people are continually told again and again is to plug your nose, shut up, and just do what we say. Save us, save us, save us. Well, black people are tired of saving people. Young people are tired of saving people. We're tired of saving people who then don't come and fight and save us, right? A black square didn't change my life. Right. And it's controversial to say, but my life has not been so fundamentally different under Trump than it has under Biden, except actually, I feel like I have less money than I've ever had before. Like, I can't go to the grocery store without spending $200. So people are facing real challenges in this country, and that's why that is what radicalizes people. Yes. That is why people are starting to think, well, maybe we need another option.
I want to add to this. I think that there's something that you've asked. You said, why are people radicalized? Well, I can tell you that people are really distrust. So it's something that's being built. The thing that happened in 2020 that was really important was this universal understanding that there was a distrust of the narrative, that there was a distrust to the central narrative. And what's being built on that right now happened because of Arab death, and then the consequent Arab journalism that covered it kind of added to that distrust of mainstream media, mainstream talking points telling us that we have all the information when we're suffering in ways we don't need to be suffering, right? Ways that seem unnecessary. And we're also getting told a certain narrative that doesn't jive. The math isn't mathing. And so the problem with people like Marianne Williamson is that she gets no coverage. So
despite having 15% of the vote in polls.
Of course she's not going to win. There's no way. The system won't cover her.
But she's not a third-party candidate.
Either way.
That is the wild thing. She's not. But when we talk about third-party candidates, we're not really talking about
we're talking about just more
Kennedy.
candidates. We're just about democracy as a concept.
Yeah.
The concept of competing for our vote.
But no one's competing for.
But no one's right.
We are instead. We're competing to be heard at all, but we have to vote no matter what.
Yeah, Marianne Williamson is and Dean Phillips and RFK whatever you think of them, they exist, but they're not getting the same amount of coverage that they could be in a system that was probably a little more honest about covering things. Right? We're on TikTok and Instagram witnessing the Palestinian sort of genocide because, well, journalists are going on TikTok and social media because the mainstream media was.
But we turn on CNN and it's not.
It's that's not on the screen, and that
the cognitive dissonance.
The dissonance is really clear to us now, and I think that isn't something that was different in 2020. I think that we were starting to really get it, and now it's more. It's just a building. I think it's an evolution, but I think
just to reiterate my point and to echo what Benjamin was saying, which is what I've been advising people is like, whatever you're feeling is like, first of all, I'm on your side. I do not want to. I don't want to have to vote for Joe Biden. Just like I didn't want to have to vote for Hillary Clinton.
And I'm on
I've
your
actually
side,
never
truly.
voted for anyone I wanted to vote for, but like, it's too fucking late. Is the only way that I can say
is
it. We're
I don't know
15.
if it's
without
too
a
late.
doubt?
That's
think
what
it's
I
too late.
actually disagree with.
Yeah,
I
like,
don't
can we
think
talk
it's
about
too late. I'm
alternative-
sorry. We are
Can we-
15 weeks away
We're
from the Iowa
getting there,
caucus.
but
I
I
We're
don't
don't.
almost
think it's
there,
too late.
but it's not too late actually. But what's the problem is that we do not actually have the power to change it. It would have to be the Democrats could say we are going. Biden could drop out tomorrow.
I think when I'm saying it's too late, I mean from like a realistic tactical
Realistically.
standpoint. Like, how are we going to actually reach people and have these conversations? We're not going to be allowed to do it via the media. Social media is not going to move fast enough. We're already every other comment that I leave on social media gets deleted. I was like discussing.
Do you think that like if one of these candidates really figured out social media that they could?
I mean,
none of them are that good.
No,
at social
Marianne
media.
Williamson is actually not bad at it. It's
She's
what
not,
built,
but,
it's what
but she could be better, I think.
And she's not perfect either. My twin brother, did some work with her, and you hear stories, you start to find out. That,
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Every
most people who
politician
run for
loves.
president probably suck in some way because you're an egomaniac
let's be
to
honest.
want to do it in the first place.
For sure.
I think like there's a bigger issue here, which is how are we going to keep people involved in a system that they no longer believe in,
Right.
and without shaming them, without gaslighting them, because they're not wrong. We don't see these things in the media. That's not a coincidence. It's because the media is owned by billionaires. Billionaires who have vested interest in ensuring that certain narratives become the pervasive ones. And so then when you hear, right-wing Trumpers saying, well, I don't trust the media, they're not all wrong. No. And we actually need to start finding that common ground and realizing that we're fighting each other, but the real enemy are 600 people who control the same amount of wealth as the 330 million of us.
Yeah.
It's really...
What
they
Bernie
pit
used
us
to talk
against
about all the time. He would say, what, 1/10 of 1% or something like
the top 1% of the top 2% of the top 3%.
But he was right.
Yeah,
and I think
people just
that's
need
why
to
Bernie
stay
got
encouraged, though.
A lot of young people came out and supported Bernie in 2016.
Yeah, because he gave them hope.
15, right?
Yeah.
16, yeah.
I remember I cried during the
was so
DNC.
sad.
No, but I cried when he
got elected.
when he was at the DNC and Hillary was like.
Well, and Bernie should have been the candidate, but this is where we start to talk about how these systems are flawed.
Yeah, totally.
Democratic Party, the Republican Party, are private institutions. They're not like government institutions. People have to actually understand how this works. And there's a small handful of people, I know them, who make these decisions, and then that is the decision, and that's it. And why can they do that? Because they control the purse strings. And until we get money out of politics, we'll never, ever be able
100%.
to change them.
That's really the...
But again, when it comes to this election, my personal opinion is vote for Biden and keep the same fucking energy. That is the truth.
I will have that.
I
I will have
we're
that
only
feeling
gonna have
in
two
like.
options.
I will have that feeling in about like 5 months. But right
and we will talk
now,
about it then.
Yeah.
So the fallout from the Supreme Court's affirmative action decision is having real ramifications for Black women in America. And I have been talking about this nonstop. People like Edward Bloom are hell-bent on not allowing us to have an even playing field. So Edward Bloom was the man who worked for 11 years to strike down affirmative action, and he was eventually successful. And now conservative groups like Californians for Equal Rights Foundation and the American Civil Rights Project are suing the state of California and the city of San Francisco for a project called the Abundant Birth Project, which provides assistance and it provides monthly stipends to Black and Pacific Islander pregnant people. So they are saying that this violates the Civil Rights Act because they are only giving money to a specific race of people. So what is it that you think makes these people so dedicated to not allowing us an even playing field?
Well, I'd love to jump in here because this actually goes right back to what I was talking about the long game. And this has been a long game. For Edward, he's been in this since the 90s, an intentional, systematic process that he enabled, which was they actually tested cases over years. What worked, what didn't.
Yeah.
And what their real goal is to set precedent. To set precedent in courts that means that they can use it again in future litigation and say, well, this was the precedent that's set that says that basically race and ethnicity cannot come into factor in anything. And why this? And I've actually read this man's work. He actually considers himself center left, which is hilarious to me. But The truth of the matter is that there's a fundamental, this is a matter of equality and equity, and they are not the same thing. He believes that everything should be equal, but everything is not equal. And there are so many conditions that have caused BIPOC people to have less of a shot. And so equity, meaning fairness, basically is how do we make that a more fair process? And considering that there is a disproportionate amount of oppression, struggle still that exists in BIPOC communities, we create systems like affirmative action to help mitigate what white supremacy culture and systems of oppression that have been intentionally set up have created all these years. Because it's not about representation, it's about historical exclusion. And BIPOC people have been historically excluded in almost every element of our society. And so we create systems that help level the playing field, but that means that people like Edward, have to work a little bit harder, so they say. And I think it's a really tough question. Edward is a Jewish American man. He has a lot of thoughts around Jewish ethnicity and how Jews are perceived as white in our society, and it's a complex conversation. But at its core, we know disproportionately Black women die in pregnancy, right? Or that Black folks only receive 1% of all that venture capital funding in a year, right? And so we could say, well, let's not put any system in place and allow that to continue to be unequal for Black people so that it can be equal for everyone. Or we can say, let's find an equitable path forward. And that's what they're afraid of. Because when we allow people the opportunity to grow and to build and allow BIPOC people to build power and collective power in our society, it means that we're able to overcome our oppression. And that means that the people who have power, there's a finite amount of power in the world. And so you have to give up some to give some to others. And they don't want to give it up, even if that means they're still ahead.
I do think it is racism. I think that essentially it's just racism, because the metrics show you that when people aren't afforded information that high information, they are going to be less safe. This man is,
just to quote him, the lawsuit calls, or not Edward Bloom, but to quote the specific lawsuit, the lawsuit calls public money used for the project and the 3 other guaranteed income programs that are in San Francisco. They call them discriminatory giveaways and illegal, wasteful, and injurious.
I don't think it'll stand, because here's the thing. The first reason is because the metrics show that there are measurable outcomes for giving this money to these people. You can legally. I have.
But so did affirmative action, right?
But affirmative action in colleges is harder to prove, and so that's why it was a wonkier and more easily arguable thing to be why is this happening? With this, you can measure the outcome of people being safe. You give them access to resources in this, in this maternal health program. There are real consequences to giving this money, and they're measurable.
You came prepared.
There are measurable outcomes. There are measurable outcomes that you can say this is helping people. And then the second thing is that unlike colleges, these women don't have an alt place. The stakes are high. If they don't get this, then they could be very sick or die. It's not you can't go to a different college. You can. So I think that the legal standing will be it's wonky. I think that it's racist. You know what I mean? It's racist, and it's affirmative action. The 14th Amendment was for a reason, and now we're literally trying to basically philosophically undo
dismantle it.
Dismantle the literal reason it was in there. It's not just for equality in the sense of everything being the same. It's equality in the sense of equity, where you're actually having measurable outcomes where people are able to live in a way that is basically universally their right to do so.
I want to get Elisa's perspective, and then I'm going to come back to Benjamin.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think affirmative action existed for a reason, because of the founding and the history of this country. And racism is not over. We haven't cured it. We haven't solved that problem. We probably won't ever. Neither is white supremacy. These things exist for a reason. And I just think it's, I haven't followed that case closely, and whatever legal, argument that was used might have been very wonky and clever. But, at its core, I think, getting rid of affirmative action is wrong. And I think the bigger problem is legacy admissions and all these other things that no one wants to talk about. But How about we talk about that and the unfair nature of how those people get accepted to Ivy League schools?
Yeah.
Folks who are getting accepted to schools under affirmative action are not the problem. And I think there's a larger dismantling of many things, Voting Rights Act, and I mean, so I think that it's a well coordinated long ball game, because that's what the right does very well, is that they really think long
They're
term.
amazing.
Because the system is not broken. It's working exactly as it's intended
Yeah.
to.
That's right.
Right.
But I did have a question for the room, but particularly for Benjamin. As a black man, I'm fascinated by, because I know we're pulling away from this, and now I'm really kind of focusing on affirmative action, but I'm fascinated by Justice Clarence Thomas, who is a black man who did, write the opinion, and he's been a supporter of striking down affirmative action because of his own personal experience as a black person, because he attended an Ivy League and
Under
was
affirmative
always under affirmative action, and he was always made to feel less than, and was always told
that's his personal
he was always told
He's
that
on the Supreme Court, though.
he was
Like, what
always
about-
told that he didn't deserve
On
the
billionaire
position that he
yachts.
was in. So I'm just curious, do we think that our own personal experiences with things like that, of like being your experience being questioned, your credentials being questioned, could lead people to this sort of like, I don't even know what to call his perspective on it.
I think I call it assimilation. And here's the thing, assimilation is death. There is a scarcity mindset that exists in many successful people of color, and we see it a lot in the black community. I've made it out, so now I have to move as the oppressor moves to prove that I deserve to be here. The truth of the matter is nothing in our society is scarce. We have an abundance of everything. It's just a matter of who has it. And so when you build collective power, when you pull more people in, instead of less, then you actually build power for your people. You make it so that we don't need affirmative action, so that we don't need all of these systems. Clarence Thomas is the epitome of an Uncle Tom. This is a man who hates himself so much, and instead of going to therapy, he takes
Which
it
he
out
can
on
afford. He
everyone
has
else.
great health insurance.
He could afford, because one of his billionaire friends would pay for it.
Harlan, what's his
Yeah,
name?
his
Yeah,
billionaire
His billionaire friend would pay for him to go
He
to
could have
therapy.
brought the
I will
therapist-
pay for Clarence Thomas to go to therapy.
Are they
He could
queer? I
have
mean,
brought
we'll
one
talk
of his
about that another
therapists on
time.
one of those yacht trips.
He absolutely, but
hello.
instead
That man
of doing
paid for
that,
too much. It was very suspicious.
but instead of that, he attacks others and uses his power to diminish the power of others so that he can continue to have his own. And that's what this is all about. Why dismantle affirmative action is because it gives white people their power back. Why try to get rid of programs that build power for marginalized communities? Because it ensures that the status quo continues. And the status quo works really well for a handful of people. They are predominantly white. They are predominantly of a higher socioeconomic class. They are predominantly come from wealth or family, wealth, familial wealth over a series of years or generations. And so they don't want the system to work for everyone. That's we need to get over this idea that people used to say, we're all on the same team. We're all fighting for the same thing. No, we're not. I'm not fighting for the same thing that a lot of neoliberals are fighting for, because they put a black square on their Instagram page, but they're Islamophobic as fuck.
Yeah, and that's
right?
the same
and it's
literal
and
problem.
it's a choice.
Yeah.
It's so people only want to dismantle oppression to the right to the edge of where it affects their privilege.
Yeah.
The second they have to give up even the smallest amount of privilege is when they say no. And Ivy League schools unlock opportunity, immense opportunity. I didn't go to college. I grew up in poverty. I got into some of the best schools in the country. I couldn't afford to go. I got into work, and by the time I was 18, I was an executive at a large nonprofit. I had to hustle. And it's because even with programs like affirmative action, I got into great schools. I still couldn't afford to go to them. The system is rigged against us. And we have to start acknowledging that not everyone wants us to succeed. Not everyone wants there to be racial equality, because that doesn't help them. And unfortunately, many people are selfish. They look at the individual instead of the collective. And that is not exclusive to white people. Clarence Thomas is a beautiful example, because he continues to benefit.
Oh my God, use
And
Clarence Thomas and beautiful in the same sentence. I'm sorry. I almost jumped out of my skin.
No, he's a beautiful example of Uncle Tometry.
Yeah,
of the worst niggatry that exists. Okay?
All right. Well, we have a couple more topics to get to, so I'm going to try to get through these final 3 topics topics rather quickly. So
Rapid fire.
pardon me. All right, so it is time for Fox News' annual War on Christmas campaign, and this week Jesse Waters really took a little spin on it this year. He made it as awful as he possibly could have. He is calling out Targets because they are featuring nutcrackers that are holding pride flags and trans flags, and then they also have Santa ornaments, and Santa is, well, two things that conservatives do not care about: black and disabled, because Santa's in a wheelchair. So, how far do you think that conservatives are willing? Because my whole thing is like, well, your whole War on Christmas thing is that we're not celebrating Christmas, but now you're picking apart Christmas decorations and just telling us that you don't want black, queer, trans, disabled people to be a part of your holiday. So what is your opinion?
I think all of these things that we're talking about are part of this larger phenomenon of white people in this country like fearing what the future of this country is going
It's
to
the
look
basis
like.
of this whole show.
Whatever, there's a name for it, replacement theory or something like that.
The great replacement theory.
Yeah, and I think that's what's happening. I think that's why abortion is a hot topic for the right, and trans issues. I think it's really just a white Christian nationalist extremist movement. I think it's a manufactured crisis to like make their base come out and get excited and vote. I think that that, and that's the most reprehensible, deplorable part of it, is that it's so self-serving and opportunistic, and there's not a shred of truth to any of the sort of anti-trans rhetoric that the right is running with, all the way to the sort of the most powerful, highest office of the land. I never in a million years thought that trans people would be the pathway to the White House for Republican people, or candidates rather. But that's what we're living in, this sort of dystopian, crazy world. And I think it's just ridiculous that they're mad about pride merch that has like, I don't know what is, nutcrackers.
It's a nutcracker.
Who gives a shit? So what? Why does it bother you? Don't buy it. Like, it's so stupid. And I think all of this is really coming to like, things are changing. The world is slowly changing. And I think they don't want that. They don't like that. And they're going to try and do everything to sort of slow that process down.
Yeah. Which the whole like the Pride Nutcracker only highlights a point that I made throughout all of Pride season, which is Target has Pride merchandise all year long.
And half of it is stupid. We're not asking for nutcrackers, okay? We're asking for equal rights. But this is, and sometimes it does get annoying because it's like let's. I'm as woke as the next, but sometimes like let's sit down. But this is ridiculous. It's not about keeping Christ in Christmas anymore. It's about keeping white in Christmas, which is what it's always been about. And they're finally starting to say the quiet parts out loud. And I say more power to you. Say it out loud. Let us know that you're a bigot. Let it out,
right?
So that I know who I'm working with. I know who my opposition is. You know what? If you hate our nutcrackers, Target's doing just fine.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about conservatives as I do. There's a meme that I saw the other day, and it was like, I really love when my washing machine gets to that angry phase. Like, yeah, let it out, girl.
I think it's a manufactured crisis, and I think what you were saying was interesting. It's a manufactured crisis of victimhood to sort of have a thing to talk about on TV, to rile up a base, to make a reason for villainizing minorities. Like it's like who cares? Also, there was one line that really pissed me off, which was like this very projected statement, which is like, this nutcracker is sexualized, like its kids are being sexualized by this flag. It's like, queer people aren't just like sexual. Like our culture isn't just sex. Like our identities like are not like sexually like it's not just sexual. It's like,
I want to know when they're gonna stop teaching Roy G. Biv in
like
school. Like, are we gonna stop letting kids learn what colors are?
Yeah, like it's honestly so low information.
Moving on. That was quick and easy.
We did it.
So, have you guys ever heard of the idea of glamour labor? Glamour labor, as written by Elizabeth Wessinger, she describes it as the work of trying to present your body as a highly edited, filtered and palatable by social media standards. And she wrote this piece, and in it she discusses how we've gotten to a point in society where instead of accessories, like our bodies are the accessories, and now we sort of just like shape our bodies and change our bodies in order to fit new trends. And there was a report about how Ozempic was going to hold people back from being able to feast during Thanksgiving because so many Americans are on weight loss drugs. And so how do you guys feel about the idea of glamour labor and having to mold yourself, mold your body to fit different standards, or how are you witnessing it?
Yeah, I actually got started in activism when I was a teenager. I started a really viral campaign against the clothing company Abercrombie and Fitch because they didn't want plus size people wearing their clothing. Netflix made a movie about it. Check it out. And and for me, I grew up. In high school I was anorexic, and it almost cost me my life. And I was anorexic because I was trying to fit into societal molds that I was told I had to fit in. And what's so scary about today is that we're not, internet has always been about creating aspiration, but now we're telling young people to aspire to things that aren't even real. The actual thing they're aspiring towards is not real. It's not reality. And so they say, why doesn't my skin look like that? Because the person you're looking at, their skin doesn't look like that either. Right. And it's really a scary time, and it's hard to have these narratives. You talk about Ozempic. I get an Ozempic ad, when I walk into the subway, when I turn on my computer. Ozempic gives people eating disorders. That's what Ozempic does. It causes you to lose your appetite and restrict your intake, and that is how you lose weight. That is an eating disorder. And so it's really a scary time. There have been attempts at passing legislation that actually makes it a requirement to show if an image has been altered, and I actually think that's a great idea. But the truth is that all of us now are becoming brands. We're not people anymore. We're just brands. And when we start to lose that humanity and instead become a commodity, what we allow ourselves to be is just another tool in the insidious nature of capitalism. And it's disgusting. And it's hard for me as a very self-realized person. I can't imagine what it's like for a teenager on the internet today, aspiring to be something that is literally just not real.
It's all made us sheep. But the way I've experienced it is that queer men are so addicted to like brands, and they all wear the same things. They all believe that their main focus in life is what they look like. It has made them less capable of being their best selves because they're so enslaved by what they want to be perceived like, how they are perceived. And it's become sort of it is the underpinning of the problem and of what we're witnessing, of like low information. Why are we so low information? Why are all of these incredible, like, why are huge powers occupying us so deeply? It's because we are all so sold on the idea that we are to be more physically and be more appealing, be all of these things that capitalism tells us that we're not. And it's made us, not only has it made us very, very boring, it's made us also very, very stupid. And it's also made us very vulnerable. And I think that the problem with glamour labor is that it's just another manufactured way of enslaving us and entrenching us in a system that makes all of the best parts of us resources that we kind of give up. And we sell for very little in return.
Yeah.
If not nothing.
So, Elisa, I had a question for you.
Okay, go.
I had a question for you specifically.
Yeah.
Well, this is a paper. This paper is also from, I think, 2018. But in it, Elisa was talking about you're Elisa. In it, Elizabeth, the writer, was discussing glamour labor specifically in the age of the Kardashians and sort of how they lead the way and they decide what the new model, what the new body is going to be. And we've seen their transition. We've seen Kim Kardashian go from looking like, a regular valley girl to the big voluptuous body to now everyone's going right back to the slim figure with the petite BBL because
Come on, petite BBL.
Because she I mean Kim got what she needed though. I said this in last week's episode. She connected herself to a billionaire black man and used him to get access to rooms, and now that she's done with that, she doesn't need the gaze of black people anymore. And I 100% believe that that's what it was. But people are following suit. So as a woman, do you see bodies and images in the world around you and feel like it is laborious to try and keep up?
Of course. I think, I mean, look, I love a good filter, don't get me wrong. So, like, I'm not, but I am also at a point in my life where I'm also not, I don't have a problem with you seeing me without the filter, right? So I'll post a picture with one, post a picture without one, because I'm not ashamed of what I really look like. But that's a journey, right? That I think young people, when they're teenagers, are at this sort of precipice and this sort of climax of this like self-confidence journey. And they spend more time on the internet, I would imagine, on social media, where nothing is real. And so I could see how it causes people's self-esteem issues, how people try and mimic their bodies to what they're seeing on magazine covers or on movies, in movies, what have you. But personally, I think this happens a lot when you like look at yourself, right? When you like the Kardashians who are on TV all the time, they probably are always looking at themselves and being critical of themselves and being like, oh, I would rather look this way or that way.
I
But
just find it fascinating that they look at their bodies as like a never-ending project.
and they also have the money to do it, right? And
But
I
also
think
society, it's
Yeah.
like like the Kardashians are problematic for many ways. I've met Kim, she's a lovely woman, whatever, very nice. But the thing is, like, they're still people. And celebrities are people. And I know our last topic is about a celebrity, but like I really think it's important that we remember that they also still have societal pressures on them.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a
to-
waste of resources.
It's wild. And so even when you are deemed one of the most famous women in the entire world,
For your looks.
for your looks, and people would, I don't even want to know what men do thinking about Kim Kardashian, and still you don't feel good enough, and still you feel the need to change. Then imagine a 13-year-old.
Yeah, right.
And it's about more. It's a deeper issue that our society, diet culture, all of these things, again, it goes back to money. These are multi-billion-dollar industries.
I think though that I'm not going to blame the Kardashians for us not raising our children to understand that they're beautiful no matter how they look, no matter what shape of their body is or what color of their hair is or their eyes. Like we have to do better as people who raise children.
Well, I would recommend you. It's a really, really, really great piece, and I would recommend you read it because she's actually not blaming the Kardashians as much as she is saying exactly what
It's a
Benjamin is
symptom.
saying. Like it's literally like
They're just a part
we're
of
able to like look at, instead of looking at these people on TV and being like, I should be like them. Why don't we look at them and focus on the fact that like they're really trying to just like keep up this image.
They're trying to keep up.
They
with
don't even
our-
want to
yeah.
be
They
like
want our
them.
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah.
They
They
want
don't
our
even, but
attention.
it's like they don't even want to be like them.
Yeah.
The people who are changing their bodies, who are filtering, they don't even want to be like them. We're all aspiring to be someone else. What if we just aspired to be ourselves? And you talk about parents, it's true, but the sad thing is that so many of those parents still have the same trauma. And it was from their parents, and it was from their parents, until we
Right.
break the cycle as a society, until we start seeing, we don't see bald guys on television, we don't see fat people in TV shows, hardly ever. And when it is, it's a joke. And so until we see all types of people represented in culture and society, we're going to continue to instead
You don't
be...
think that we're making a little progress? And I'm talking
Yeah.
specifically about like in the modeling world, I've seen so many different like shapes, sizes, people with different types of like mobility capabilities now on runways.
But it's
on
usually a
magazines. So
gimmick. Like, that's the hard part, is it's
I don't know if
usually a
it's done
gimmick.
like from a genuine place
Yeah.
more than it is to like be like inclusive and like
Yeah,
you know.
but to be diverse but not inclusive, and people
Yeah.
mess these letters up. But diversity is what everyone's striving for, but they're not creating an inclusive world that lets the diversity thrive. And diversity is just an abundance of others. It's a difference. But inclusion means that we create a space where people are included. And so you can have a fat person on a TV show, but when they're making self-deprecating jokes about themselves, that's not an inclusive environment for them. And so it's hard because there's so much nuance here, and it's systemic. And we have all these issues that are systemic. And how do we break down systemic issues starting at the community level up? And it will take hard conversations. It will take parents. It will take all of us like just acknowledging sometimes like I'm not perfect. So I stopped filtering my photos because this is what I look like. And if you don't like it, it
And
doesn't
the
really
overwhelming
matter to
majority
me.
of people don't look like the Kardashians.
Yeah.
So
The Kardashians don't look like the Kardashians.
Yeah, it's a waste of-
they edit their
it's a
own
waste of
photos
resources.
poorly. We see all those photos, Khloe's arms over here and shit. You know, they don't even look like the Kardashians.
Kim Kardashian is a very smart person. Imagine if all of her focus and her entire energy was able, because I don't think it's her fault, was able to be focused on how incredibly cunning she is, right? Like all of this backbending and making such a success out of herself is because she kind of knows what is needed. She's meeting those expectations, but those expectations are corrupt to begin with, which are that she has to be beautiful to have our attention.
But it's true. It's like we say, like, well, if only she would have done this. But if she wouldn't have done what she did, she wouldn't
couldn't
be
be here,
who
right,
she
yeah,
is. And in return, she makes a lot of money. And this is money rules so many of the decisions we make. And we have to acknowledge that celebrities often make choices based on what society requires of them to continue to have the power.
Most of these things are meaningless. Like,
And they
the
are
power that
meaningless.
we speak of, like all of this influence, like what is it doing for who? And like why?
Exactly.
Like I like the next person would love to be appealing to everybody. Like I love the idea of being like good looking to other people. That's great. But it doesn't make me more helpful.
It's also subjective,
like,
though. Like,
yeah, so what I'm saying is that it's like meaningless in the
Yeah.
end because in
Tell
the
me,
end,
like,
you look great to me. You know
Thank
what
you,
else looks
baby.
great to me? The last topic
Yes.
of the episode. So Tiana Taylor yesterday made a post where she basically pleaded with her fans and with her audience to please stop discussing the details of her separation from her soon-to-be ex-husband Iman, who people discovered she secretly filed for divorce a couple of months ago, and those documents leaked online, and people were speculating what the reason for the divorce is. We're discussing possible cheating allegations and abuse. So she seemed very upset because, as she says, she doesn't bother anyone. She's not someone that we know for being in drama, and still she's being subjected to her personal life being shared out there when she wasn't sharing it. So, but should celebrities expect privacy?
No. Well, I guess it depends, but I think Tiana Taylor gave up her privacy when she decided to make a career out of
Beyond
being
My Sweet 16?
a celebrity, a rapper, or whatever.
Okay, I'll let you finish.
I mean, celebrities are just not held to the same standard, right? Like they're not. They're human beings, but they make a living off of putting their life out into the world. Should they have their own things to themselves? Yeah, but realistically, I just don't see how you could say, stay out of my business when you make a career out of being famous. Now, I will say, marriage is hard. It is not easy, and so I feel for her from that perspective. But yeah, I'm not sure that we owe her privacy in this moment, because it's like everything else is out there. It's out there when it's beneficial for you, but now I can't talk about it because you don't want. I mean, I don't know.
I personally disagree. I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. First of all, almost half of the states in the United States, 23 states, keep divorce records private. Why? Because they're super, super private. It's one of the most private parts of your life, and it has nothing to do with the public. So why should that be public record? I also want to acknowledge she has 2 children, 7 and 3 years old. And so when you release that she called her husband a narcissist or abusive, or the language that's in this, one day her kids are going to see that. They're people. They're real people. I have many friends who are celebrities, and some of them are celebrities because they did something really well. They didn't ask to be famous. They don't actually engage. They're not calling up the tabloids doing, most paparazzi photos are fake. They're staged. People don't realize this. There are people who call up, and they pay for it themselves, and they get styled before. But I think we have to start looking at celebrities as humans and not actually lifting them up. Celebrity culture is gross.
Yeah.
The way we see people obsess over Taylor or Beyonce, they're just people. They're
I
just
think
people.
I mean, the document itself being leaked out there, I'm not agreeing with that, but the discussion about her divorce and the discussion about what was released, I don't think that she can say, please don't talk about it. Whoever put that out there, then that's messed up.
Yeah,
Don't put
why
that out
the
there like that.
fuck should
Probably
I care?
somebody in her circle, though.
Why the fuck should I
who
care
gives a
that
fuck?
people are getting divorced? Like, why that celebrity culture? This isn't real or normal in other cultures. Like in other countries, like this obsession with knowing people who are good at things, good enough to be well known for them, on a level that is this sick. I mean, on a level that is this invasive, is sick. It's like, why do you give a fuck about her divorce? Like essentially, if you would tell me about it, I would read it because it would be sort of passively coming into my world. But it's like leaking that information is for a reason.
Well,
it's for something.
I think it's because celebrities lean into celebrity culture. So
Sure.
So I would
Exactly.
say
100.
the same way that I cried my eyes out when Derek died on Grey's Anatomy is the same way that people feel attached to celebrity couples who let us into their
It's
lives.
so capitalized.
And so
stupid.
Exactly.
They're
It's-
not your
It doesn't make
friends.
any
But what
sense.
I'm saying
So
is,
they're
I'm not
leaning in.
agreeing with it for the
But-
record. I'm
right,
just
right. I
saying
understand.
you're asking why, and I think that that's why is because they use their platforms and they engage with us. Because here's the things that you want to be private should be private.
Who
always?
But who is leaking it and for what reason? It's for money.
Oh no, I'm
It's
not
for
talking about
something.
that.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm talking about
it's
why
all
people
just-
care.
100%. It's about the whole system of buying in and investing in telling people about yourself so that you can be on their mind and be relevant. And then people having this addiction to that, but also just going back to the moment of like leaking it. It's like that person leaked it for a reason. Like they were getting something. I mean, maybe it was just notoriety. Maybe it was
the
just
leaking of what exactly was it? Somebody leaked a
the
divorce
divorce
paper?
document.
Document, yeah.
That's messed up.
yeah, exactly.
That
Like,
was,
what did they get for that?
sealed. In my understanding,
Yeah,
it was a
sealed.
sealed document, and so she did have an expectation of privacy there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's like it's just a little bit deeper of an issue, which is to say, like, we as a society need to start giving people more grace and understanding that, like, she's a real person who now everyone is talking about. One of the hardest things she's ever, if there was abuse, for example, and now everyone's talking about it. Think about, like, celebrities want attention, but it's controlled the same way that we get to control what we share out to the world. And when there are people hiding out or asking friends or doing all this deep research trying to expose your life, is that cool? No, it's not cool.
I love how
And
she's
we
like,
can-
don't talk about it. We're having a whole discussion.
Well, it's like, but you can say
He's like, "You're
you
out of
can
the chat."
Yeah, oops, sorry.
back.
But
Sorry, Tiana.
it's
Shout out to
it's
Tiana
like
in
we can
Harlem.
say that, you know, celebrities don't deserve privacy, or like, you know what you're signing up for. I don't know if anyone really knows what they're signing up for. Right. And as someone who, like, at one point, there was a period of time where I couldn't go to the airport without someone coming up to me, right? And part of it was because I shared my story. But the problem was that people felt such an ownership over our stories, my story. And people have an ownership over these celebrities. They think they live to serve them, and they don't. Beyonce's a singer. She sings, and we like it, and so she can charge a premium for it. Does that mean we deserve to know everything about her life? No, we don't deserve to know anything about anyone. And when people share it, that is a gift that we are being given. And at that, I think that's the problem at the core, is that no one can assume ownership over anyone's story.
But I feel like we learned that lesson way too late. And I just think, in general, people need to start, before you share, be aware of what is intimate, what it is that you want to keep private. Like, and I learned that lesson this year. I called off my engagement, I called off my wedding, and in my very
Can we talk about that?
no, but in my
Exactly.
but because this was a lesson that I learned, but in that very small community of people who follow me and people who listen to, you know, my other podcasts, it became a discussion online, and I didn't share that information publicly. Someone else did, and so now I've decided, like, there are things that I will not offer up in my life.
Yeah.
But, you know,
And you deserve
celebrities-
that.
But celebrities also need to know that.
Yeah.
Like, Halle Bailey, Chloe's sister, is rumored to be pregnant. But it's like, when Kylie Jenner was pregnant, we found out when her child was like 5 months old because she
Right.
wanted privacy and she hid
got it.
away. She left. We did not see her. Halle Bailey is like
Yeah, but she also, but Halle
using.
Bailey has
Last
less
night she was
power
on a
than-
red carpet and she used a child as a human shield. And it's like, you want us to
Well,
speculate.
that is trying to draw speculation. She's trying to draw attention, of course.
Yeah, Halle Bailey has less power, I think, than Kylie Jenner, who has an entire entrenched system of PR around her, being bought off to not fucking look at
She's
her.
on like YouTube live streams with her
Yeah,
boyfriend. Like, if you
yeah.
wanted privacy, you would just
Yeah,
get
like
I
Halle
don't- I
Bailey's
don't
like, I
think-
need to stay
I don't
relevant
think
because
she
if I
wants
don't, I
privacy.
don't have Mama and like
Yeah.
my entire like.
She has the
like-
color purple coming out in a couple weeks. Like,
Which
she'll
looks
be fine.
amazing.
She will
Good
be
for you,
fine, for sure,
Halle.
relative to us, but not relative to Kylie Jenner. Like,
I guess, but what I'm saying is the people who want privacy,
I don't-
like, do what you need.
Do
I
what you
think
need.
maybe I come to this question with my perspective because, like, I don't have anything about me that's private other than, like, maybe because I don't really post my partner online. People may not know who he is, but I ran for public office and all these stuff. And so, like, every single darkest skeleton in my closet was put into the New York Post. So
I remember that.
It's liberating.
He's
It's
like, "I know
like
your
I
skeleton."
feel liberated now. Like there's nothing about me that I want to be hidden or a secret anymore. Like I'm totally comfortable with every single thing about me being me about me.
But if you
being out
weren't,
there.
you deserve to not
Yeah,
have it
no,
shared.
I agree.
And public officials, you running for public office doesn't mean that the public owns you. That means it's a
No,
shared.
I wouldn't go as far
Do you
as
know
to say
what I
they
mean?
own
But
me.
no, but it's or
but-
your story. But it's like we are allowed to set boundaries that make us comfortable as people, and our jobs do not dictate our right to privacy.
But
agree
I
with you.
knew what I was getting into, and I knew that there was no way I was going to be able to run a campaign till the end without everything about me being put out to the public.
Yeah.
So I talked about these things myself to owning, my own narrative, but I knew that, and it was still hard
Yeah.
because it was painful stuff that I hadn't reckoned with myself. So I was kind of reckoning with it and dealing with it in real time as everyone else was finding out. But in hindsight, I think it was great for me because now it's like, girl, there's nothing about me
Yeah.
You free.
that I'm like,
Liberation. It can't be
Sure,
used.
nothing
against
that you
you.
can say about me that's going to make me feel any kind of way
Well,
because it's like, I
Like
own it all.
Benjamin said, boundaries are important. I'm setting a boundary with the runtime of this episode. So
Love that.
thank you to
Thank you.
this week's panel.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys for joining me. When we come back, I will be joined by activist and artist Alexandra Jamieson to talk about the abortion trading cards. I'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to Here's Why. Today, I am joined by Alexandra Jamieson, creator of the Abortion Trading Cards, an accessible art collection that is set to be released in January to mark the 51st anniversary of the landmark Roe v. Wade decision. Alexandra, welcome to Here's Why.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, thank you for your time. So tell us a little bit about this project, the Abortion Trading Cards.
So I'm an artist and a writer, and the constant chipping away at reproductive rights, healthcare, abortion access has been a strong passion of mine since the 90s. But in the last year, things have gotten very intense, very scary. And as an artist, I take what's happening in my head and around me in the world and funnel it into stuff to look at, so to engage with. I didn't know what I was making until I was halfway through this project and realized that it was a whole world that I was coming up with. It's kind of a dystopian future kind of art project. And my good friend Rebecca Barucki, who's the publisher and founder of Row House Books, saw it. I was posting some pictures online. She saw it and she said, "We need to get this out there. This is great. Let's do this." So it's coming out now to the world.
So how do people use these trading cards?
So it comes just like a deck of cards. This is the actual deck that it looks like. And it says ATC upside down, ATC on it, which stands for Abortion Trading Cards.
Mhm.
And it's in this plain brown box, which harkens back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s when people would get salacious and pornographic material in the mail. It would come in a plain brown wrapper to disguise that there was porn in it.
Wow.
So you always knew if there was a plain brown wrapper, something really interesting was inside.
That's so fascinating. And so tell me a little bit more about the book. I've seen some of the images and they're beautiful.
Yeah, so there's 36 cards in the deck, and they're just like regular playing cards, like you would play poker with. And each card has a specific images. They're all unique. They're kind of like they have like anatomy, like skeletons and skulls and stuff on the front of it. Like I'm channeling my inner Gen X goth girl, basically, into the design of it. But on the back are things like abortifacient herbs, which are herbs that have been used throughout history around the world by midwives, by witches, by wise people to induce abortion or prevent pregnancy. There's also history. There's Bible quotes about abortion. Did you know that Benjamin Franklin wrote an abortion recipe in the 1700s?
I had no
That's on
idea.
one of the cards,
Wow.
right? There's stuff from Angkor Wat in Cambodia. There's actually carvings of an abortion-inducing massage that's been used for hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years in Asia. And then it comes with a little booklet that just comes right out of the box, and each card has the story, journaling questions, or conversation questions. Because what I really want is not just for people to have a cool art project that they can carry around, but I want people to get really clear about how they feel and think and become more vocal, more active about abortion rights, about voting, about access. So that's the point of this.
Yeah. So, do you think that having these cards will be more of a conversation starter for people? Because this, the topic of abortion, the topic of reproductive rights, for people in America it can be a touchy subject. So is it something that we should be discussing among each other? And if so, is this a tool that we can use to be, maybe ease into those difficult conversations?
Yeah, it is a tough subject for a lot of different reasons, right? We may not know how the people in our lives feel about it, right? It's not something that people are always very vocal about. It's only, I would say only in the last 5 years, 10 years, it's become so much more part of public discussion, right? There's a platform called Shout Your Abortion, right? People actually telling their stories in public, which I think is fantastic. But you may not know how people around you feel about it, and you may not feel comfortable, even though you want people to have access and choice. But it's like any quote unquote taboo topic. It's only taboo because we're letting somebody else hold the moral high ground in some way. We're giving away our power when we don't talk about something that's important to us.
Yeah.
I think by using it as a conversation starter, as a game, it will help people take action more. And I do believe that there are, many polls show, right? The latest elections that we just went through across the United States, abortion rights wins elections.
It's true.
There are more people who want access to good reproductive care than want to take it away. But we all have to show up and participate to make sure that that is true. And when I say play a game with it, it's not like there's only 36 cards, so you can't actually play poker with them. But I have hosted a couple of card parties with them. And I will just put out all the cards and have people pick them up. Like, which ones are you attracted to? What do you want to okay, what's this one about? Okay, interesting. That's at the very top. So this is a picture of cotton root bark, which I actually learned about this from a great paper diving into the history of different abortifacient plants in North America. And cotton root bark was used by enslaved African women, probably learned about from local indigenous women, but they're not sure who had the knowledge first. But it was shared between communities to end a pregnancy. So this is I was like, oh my God, I've never heard of this before. I started researching different herbs and plants, and it opened up a whole conversation about the history of this, not just in this country, but around the world.
Yeah. And so, when we discussed the fact that abortion rights and reproductive rights, I like to say, because abortion, reproductive rights in America, like we said, people are in favor of bodily autonomy. And we've seen that over and over again through various election cycles ever since Roe v. Wade was overturned last year. Every state that has held an election where an amendment is up for vote, an amendment on abortion rights, abortion wins every single time. Ohio is now the 7th state in a row that has voted in favor of codifying reproductive rights in that state's constitution. So when you hear those news and when you are able to channel your activism into this form of art, do you feel hopeful about where we're headed?
I do. And as we saw in Ohio, right, the state turned out and voted, yes, we want to enshrine abortion access into the state constitution. And that night, the head of the Republican Party in Ohio was like, no, we're going to ignore everything that you all just voted for, and we're going to dismantle this immediately. So as we see, like, even though voters are showing up and voting for this, the powers we're fighting against are just as passionate about taking our bodily autonomy away from us. And it's not just this. We know that it's not just abortion access that they want to take away. They want to take access away for contraception. They want to make it illegal to be gay, to be queer. It's all part and parcel of this same, Christo-fascist. Sorry, I will go on and on about this topic. But I am hopeful. I am hopeful because people are turning out.
Yeah.
And my hope is that we won't lose hope. We won't get tired because we're just coming into 2024, which is a big election year.
Yeah.
And it feels like we should be feeling relief. We should be proud of the efforts people have been putting into these races and wins, but the fight is not nearly over. So I'm hoping that, when people get the cards and maybe they have some of their friends over, that they'll feel encouraged, that they'll feel more energy again. They'll have some fun talking about a really tough topic and continue fighting.
Yeah, I love that. So before I let you go, I want to let people know where they can get these cards, but also it is important to let people know that Row House Publishing, who is putting this out, is not taking any profits from these cards. So tell us a little bit about that mission, as well as the 15% that is going to a foundation. Let us know how buying these cards is not just a form of activism, but it is also productive.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, a huge shout out to Row House Publishers, an incredible publishing. I mean, this is a brand new independent publishing company. They're only a few years old and they've already had huge successes with some of their titles. They have a totally transparent model for paying authors, which is unheard of in the publishing world. And they're taking zero profits from these cards. Also unheard of. Like, they're keeping, I think, like 10, they're basically only covering their costs to print and distribute, which is huge because we're giving 15% of the entire project to the Bridget Alliance. And the Bridget Alliance is a nonprofit that helps people travel to get abortion care. So as we know, what is it, 16 states now, you cannot get abortion care. So people are having to travel out of state. And it can actually cost, this is shocking, it can cost tens of thousands of dollars for one person to travel out of state to get an abortion, because most people seeking an abortion are already parents, right? Over 50% of people who need abortion care already have kids. So they need licensed, qualified childcare to take care of their kids while they're gone for a week or more, to travel, have a hotel, get the aftercare. So it becomes this massive financial burden just to get that care. So the Bridget Alliance does incredible work. So yeah, we're partnering with them. We're giving them 15%. So not only do you get a cool, funky, weird dystopian Gen X Goth Girl art project. You can feel good about where the money's going to.
That's incredible. Okay, so the trading deck is on pre-sale. Where can people
Yes.
buy it?
You can go to rowhousepublishers.com
Mhm.
and the decks are available for like $20 and they'll be out January 22nd, 51st anniversary of Roe v. Wade. So let's try to have it be a positive day.
Amazing. Well, Alexandra, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it so much. I wish you a ton of success. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your activism. And I can't wait to get my deck.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into this week's episode of Here's Why. I will be back next week. Until then, talk to you later. Take care. Love you. Bye.